This meeting is being recorded.
I really love how I get like validation that the meeting is being recorded. As if I was doubting it, I know that the podcast is being recorded. The podcast will be televised. Good afternoon, everybody. Although, well, it'll be afternoon by the time you're seeing this. You are watching or listening to another edition of Forward Maryland. My name is Bill Woodcock.
And I'm Steve Hunt. Happy Super Bowl Sunday, everybody.
And we are coming at you with a surprise drop of the magnitude of a Beyonce album of a Forward Maryland episode this Super Bowl Sunday. Steve, it is Super Bowl Sunday. Who you got?
Actually, Bill, I'm going to give you not one, but two predictions for Super Bowl Sunday, and they're related. Super Bowl pick, I'm going with the Rams, the home team, and I'll give you a score. I'm thinking 31-20. And my second prediction, and the reason the Rams are going to win, is because of the Super Bowl MVP, who will be Aaron Donald. In the words of Mickey from the Rocky movies, this guy is a wrecking machine. And if you saw Joe Burrow flat on his behind 9 times against the Titans, and if you saw him running for his life against a Chiefs defense that is not known, I mean, they're not exactly to be confused with Doomsday, the Fearsome Foursome, or the Steel Curtain. Donald is going to be living in Joe Burrow's head in the backfield of the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think that will lead to, Jalen Ramsey getting a pick and some other things. So I think it will be the Rams defense that makes it happen, and Aaron Donald will get the MVP in a Rams victory. What about you, Bill? What you got there?
Well, I would also add the purple pain defense of the 2000 Ravens, Steve. But
yes,
I am this is going to be a rare source of disagreement because I am going to pick the Bengals in a Super Bowl upset. I am going to say a 34-31 score with a last-second field goal deciding the game if the game doesn't go into overtime, which I think it might. I think that as with other playoff games, I expect the Rams to go out and take a lead. By the way, the Rams are actually the away team for today's Super Bowl. They're not the home team, although they are in the home stadium. They're going to be wearing, I think, their sandy tan road uniforms, which is some odd color that was invented for the NFL. But then the Bengals will catch up, much as they did in the AFC Championship game. And I like either a last-second field goal or overtime field goal to win it. MVP, I'm going to go Joe Burrow. And I have to admit that everything I've just said is very selfish for me as a Ravens fan because, Steve, as you know, as a great philosopher said, to be the man, you got to beat the man. Mm-hmm. And if the Bengals in the AFC North are the Super Bowl champs, that makes them the man, which means the Ravens get 2 chances next year to knock the man off the stand.
Well, if you saw an interview I think it was on the NFL Network with Marlon Humphrey of the Baltimore Ravens, he is looking forward to it. And he did mention that very thing and saying, hey, they win, we get 2 shots to take out the champ. So you were in line with the Ravens. By the way, this is my Ravens hat, since it is also the 10th anniversary of the Ravens winning the Super Bowl. I decided to wear my Super Bowl champions hat from 10 years ago and have fond memories of all things Flacco, Q Bolden, and the rest of the gang who were a part of Ray's Last Ride. By the way, Bill, one more prediction I want to give for you and see what you think. We will not get an NWA reunion at halftime.
I want that. I want that to happen. Ice Cube was at LA Coliseum doing the halftime show, as it were, for that NASCAR race they had in the Coliseum. So you got Dre, you got Snoop, you bring Cube out, it's all over. Plus, I also would like to see a live mic takedown of the NFL by the halftime performers over the NFL's racist hiring practices.
Well, I think that Dr. Dre is gone. I think we now have corporate Dre, and I think that he, along with his sponsor, corporate Jay-Z, I would have loved to have seen NWA do the Super Bowl 20 years ago, but I don't think Dre has it in him. I think that I think
and Snoop's not corporate.
Oh, he is too. Oh, trust me.
They're all corporate. They're all corporate.
I'll throw them all under the bus. Trust me. I mean, there are young rappers
He's
out there.
not corporate in, Car Shield.
Oh, look,
Come
Snoop lost me when he did raps in Pussycat Doll songs, okay? Or when he was doing hooks with Katy Perry when she was Pop Katy Perry. So don't even get into me with Snoop. He is long gone. So
incidentally, Steve, I was wondering whether or not to bring this up. I feel as your co-host and your friend, I should. The Ravens last won the Super Bowl 9 years ago. That was Super Bowl 47. Today is Super Bowl 56. 56.
Okay, because I had
2047 is 9.
Okay, I had 2012 on the brain, so it was the.
Well, it was the 2012 season,
and
so the Super Bowl was contested in 2013.
Okay, and we don't talk about the 12 season because I don't like how that one ended. That was the.
That was the year that Lee Evans dropped the winning touchdown in the end zone, and then Billy Cundiff missed the field goal, and then the following morning I had to put my cat down. Yeah, that was a terrific weekend for me. So thank you for bringing up that memory. And on with the issues of the day. We now have, because we cannot get a guest, a political anthology, which many viewers and listeners do enjoy. So I'm going to lead off with a quick roundup of political issues that are affecting our county, state, and nation, which of the last week, leading off, and I just saw this gentleman, if you can use the term, on CNN earlier this morning. Maryland Governor Larry Hogan has announced that he will not be challenging incumbent U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen in 2022. Steve, this is a typical case of how national politics get federal elections wrong. National media, and I think it's the national politics, I meant national media. National media always get federal elections wrong. And I'll tell you why. There was nobody in the state of Kentucky who really thought that this former fighter pilot, Amy McGrath, was going to beat Mitch McConnell for the U.S. Senate in 2020. Yet, on social media, in CNN, MSNBC, Amy McGrath is going to beat Mitch McConnell. First off, Amy McGrath barely won the primary. I actually like the gentleman who had ran, the African-American gentleman who had ran against her.
He's running again, by the way.
Good.
Yeah,
Secondly,
Booker's running against Rand Paul. Yep.
Amy McGrath got trounced by, and so, same thing with the person in Maine who was going to beat Susan Collins because Susan Collins is so terrible. Susan Collins is terrible. The people of Maine also love Susan Collins. Susan Collins trounced that person. We had a U.S. Senator in the state of Maryland named Paul Sarbanes, who, God rest his soul, but the man was about as accomplished. Well, he had one bill, the Sarbox bill on trade and intellectual property. And he was a very smart man, but about as charismatic as a wet piece of cardboard. Paul Sarbanes won election after election after election after election. Why? Because he was popular with the people of the state of Maryland. Chris Van Hollen is more popular in the state of Maryland than Larry Hogan is. And so you say, well, how can that be? Because Larry Hogan has a 70% approval rating and whatnot. Larry Hogan has a 70% approval rating because people like the perception that Larry Hogan fights for them. if you look at Larry Hogan's actual record as governor, which he would have to run on, and which not just Senator Van Hollen, but the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee would focus on, they would poke so many holes in Larry Hogan's record, Hogan would feel like his body was being eaten by termites. It would not be a pretty picture. And if you go back and look at what this man's been able to achieve in 7.5 years as governor, it's a bunch of nothing. So maybe McConnell and others were talking to Hogan and also Doug Ducey, the governor of Arizona, about running there. I don't know about Arizona. I would venture to guess to say Arizona, the Mark Kelly seat would be an easier seat to flip over than Chris Van Hollen. But anybody who really thought that Larry Hogan was going to run for senator in the state of Maryland has rocks in their head. Hogan did say today on CNN that he is not ruled out a run for the White House, that is something that he is looking at and considering. And if there is any other further Hogan campaign after 2022, I think that's where he's going to go. So yes, the governor had a press conference. Oh, we have to finish the job in the state of Maryland, so I'm not going to run for senator. Finish what job exactly, Larry? You're governor for 11 more months. In 2 more months, your last legislative session ends. You're officially a lame duck. In fact, you're kind of a lame duck now. You still have majority veto-proof supermajorities against you in both houses of the state legislature. You fail to choose to compromise with Democrats on anything. You were a lame duck from when you were first elected. Steve, why did the national media choose to filth up our airways with this nonsense?
I have no idea, because it never was going to happen. And by the way, when you talk about, people not running for Senate on the Republican side, throw in Governor Sununu from New Hampshire, who also bowed out, although, he came straight out and said why he wasn't running. So, he basically said, they're full of crap down there in DC. My party right now is full of crap and I ain't trying to roll with them. So I give him credit for at least not coming up with
Maggie Hassan, the senator from New Hampshire. Yes.
Yeah. And that one would also be an easier seat to flip than the state of Maryland. But let me just say this, Bill. The number one person who from Jump, well, maybe number 2 behind you, I don't know, but one of the top people from Jump who were convinced that Larry Hogan wasn't running was Larry Hogan. He never had any intention of running. Look, Larry Hogan does have presidential aspirations. He does have aspirations beyond the great state of Maryland. And if you think a guy like Larry Hogan was going to risk having Chris Van Hollen dunk on him and drop a big fat L in his face in 2022, no. One thing you will say about Hogan, he is measured, he is a political animal, he reads the tea leaves, and he knows what time it is. And he knows that what is his better legacy? Former 2-time governor, 2-term governor of a blue state as a Republican, or some guy whose last memory was watching Chris Van Hollen hit him with the spear, the jackhammer, the people's elbow, and drop him at a figure 4 for good measure. He doesn't want that. People who come into something off of a big fat L it's not a good look. Hogan was not going to have that. So I don't know what the media was thinking in the first place. Now, as far as your other areas where you're talking about, McGrath and others, I throw Jamie Harrison in South Carolina against Lindsey Graham. We could talk Beto O'Rourke a few years back, although Beto came pretty close, so I give him credit. But it's not just the media when it comes to those things; it's also Democrats. And I was reading an article recently where I forget which one of it was. Might have been Carville, might have been some others, third way types, talking about how, as Democrats, we need to stop chasing the shiny objects. To your point, Susan Collins was not going to lose. Lindsey Graham was not going to lose. Mitch McConnell was definitely not going to lose. These things were not going to happen. And in 2020, there were other races out there that were winnable that Democrats didn't give a hoot about. Steve Bullock in Montana, I thought was a better possibility than Amy McGrath in Kentucky. So, the media chases a story. They chase Hogan. I think you said it perfectly. They chase Hogan because he is this, tower of bipartisanship and working together and all. They obviously have never stepped foot in the state of Maryland or in Annapolis, but he has cultivated this image and they've bought into it. And I think he lives on State of the Union, which is, I believe, the show that he was on earlier today on CNN. I think he's got I think I have him on retainer or something, but yeah, he was never running. And he knew he wasn't running. He was just going to roll with the attention. Like you said, he's a lame duck. He's done. And he's going to maximize the attention that he can bring onto himself between now and the time he turns over the keys to the governor's mansion to somebody else. And then he'll start plotting 24 and probably realize that he has no shot behind a DeSantis or a Trump or a Noam or others who are much more embedded in MAGA world. So, yeah.
I'm really interested to see how a 65-year-old, 6 foot tall, 6 foot around guy from Maryland who laughs like this is going to do running for president. I mean, Martin O'Malley with his, moderate troubadour image couldn't even get 1% in Iowa. What the hell is Larry Hogan going to do in that field? I have no clue. Steve, you got. I'm done with this topic. It doesn't even require a second comment. You've got something else of a national bend that I think needs more airtime here.
Well, thank you, Bill. And this one was set off by two events, two sets of events recently. One was the Canadian trucker blockade of the bridge, which, by the way, sees the most traffic of any crossing in North America, where hundreds of millions of dollars of commerce goes through. And because of the blockade, by all accounts, workers in Michigan lost tens of millions of dollars in lost wages. And it brought me to the subject I'm going to bring up, and it is called Hypocrisy Run Amok, Republican Style. Now, mind you, hypocrisy is not an exclusive to the Republican Party. There are plenty of Democrats and Democrat-leaning people who are certainly as guilty. I mean, people who defended Bill Clinton back in the 90s, some of those defenses were nuts, quite frankly. So it's not exclusive to one side of the aisle or the other. It's also not exclusive to national levels, although we're talking about it here. If you go to Howard County development Twitter or affordable housing Twitter, you will see self-proclaimed progressives espousing positions that are anything but progressive. So hypocrisy is everywhere, and it's not just in this country. I'm sure we could find it elsewhere. But right now, it almost feels like the Republican Party on a national level, supported by their friends in the conservative entertainment complex, have taken, I don't know, maybe a New Year's resolution, I don't know, but to be as hypocritical as humanly possible and really just go over the top with blatant hypocrisy. I don't know, but you have this blockade. And I remember years ago during the Black Lives Matter protest, and it wasn't that many years ago, you had Republicans losing their minds over tent cities in Portland and sitting out in front of the White House to the point where the president had to A, put up, big old fences, and B, do the whole push people out and do the upside down Bible stunt. They were losing their minds over that. But for all their talk about inflation and supply chains, it's Biden's fault, this blockade basically extended that. But yet you have people like Rand Paul and Ted Cruz and others saying, well, it's their right to protest. It's free speech, and it's this and it's that and the other. And there's even talk now about they ought to go, block the Super Bowl and shut down the Super Bowl. Really? So the pro-business party is now espousing shutting down businesses and shutting down commerce? Really? That's who you are now? It just boggled the mind. Now, this was on the back of the whole issue with the Supreme Court. And as we know, Joe Biden has promised to nominate and get onto the Supreme Court bench a Black woman, a historical first that is long overdue. And yet you've got people like Roger Wicker in Mississippi and others who are calling out affirmative action. Of course, they get selective amnesia over the fact that Ronald Reagan, he used to be a conservative icon. I guess he probably couldn't even make it to a primary in today's Republican Party. In October, because some people say, no, he did it later. No, there is tape. Even in the 1980s, there are receipts. Maybe they're not on the internet, but there are receipts. October of 80, he said, it is high time to put a woman on the bench. And guess what Reagan did? He put a woman on the bench. Sandra Day O'Connor made that history. Donald Trump, your God and King, made the statement when he was running. Yes, we need to have women on the bench. And if you believe some of the reporting, when it came time to replace Anthony Kennedy, Amy Coney Barrett was out there. And word is, we're holding that for the Ginsburg replacement. So there was a concerted effort to make sure we replace a woman with another woman. And oh, by the way, if you think Clarence Thomas was the best thing that George H.W. Bush could get his hands on to replace Thurgood Marshall, and somewhere out there or in there or wherever they weren't looking for a black man to replace the first black justice, you're kidding yourself. That's not the case. So, for them to get their panties in a bunch and clutch their pearls over the fact that Joe Biden said he was going to do something that, oh, by the way, needs to be done. And by the way, if you look at his final 3 or 4, they're probably more qualified coming in than most of the existing bench was when they came in. Okay. I mean, these women are so legit. It's not funny. I wish we could put all 3 of them on the bench, but then I'd be accused of court packing and whatever. Even though McConnell's been packing the courts for 30 years with his friends of the Federalist Society. I promise, Bill, I won't rant on any longer, but it's just examples. And we could even get into cancel culture. They're trying to cancel Joe Rogan for, saying the N-word so many times he could have been on Def Comedy Jam. No matter that those who talk about cancel culture, who came up with the word, are the original cancelers. Aaron Rodgers just got his 2nd MVP after lying to the entire planet about his COVID situation. Meanwhile, Colin Kaepernick, who did a very quiet protest and didn't go on 58 shows saying the government wasn't worth crap, took a knee. And Donald Trump was out there firing SOBs. He wanted to fire every black person in the NFL at one point. But I do have to, one more thing, Bill, the coup de grace. But her emails, remember that? Remember when Hillary Clinton needed to go to jail? Remember, even in the 2020 campaign, we had lock her up, right? Michael Flynn and others, like Michael Flynn talking about locking people up. I won't even go there. But lock her up, because she used, let's see, an personal email for government business. Let's see, apparently the Trump kids were doing that and some other officials in the Trump administration. She destroyed emails. Remember, Russia, if you're listening, right? And destroying cell phones allegedly. Okay, so we're destroying evidence. Lock her up. Look what we're seeing now. Now that reporters who had information for years have decided to write books. Yes, Maggie Haberman, I'm talking to you. We have, let's see, he ripped up documents all the time to the point where the White House literally had a process by which they could recover the torn up documents, tape them back up so they could go to the National Archives. He took documents with him when he left to Mar-a-Lago. Remember, all we were concerned was about him taking the silverware? Apparently he took top secret documents. And because they were not declassified, they were still top secret in those 15 boxes. Now we've got Toiletgate, where apparently they had a plumber on retainer to unclog toilets, not with tissue paper, not with toilet paper, but with sensitive government documents. I don't know about you, Bill, but those Lend the Plumber commercials are not going to feel the same ever again. So I say all this to say, and of course, you ask Republicans about all of these crimes, the same ones who wanted Hillary Clinton drawn and quartered, crickets. So guys, a little bit of hypocrisy is part and parcel for politics, but y'all are over the top. And oh, by the way, cancel culture, you're canceling your own people, Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. So I don't ever want to hear, Tucker Carlson or any of you other fools talking about hypocrisy this or hypocrisy that. You were living it, you were breathing it, you may as well just own it because it's your brand now, along with everything else that needs to be squashed so that we can go on with this experiment called democracy without the interference of you fools whose leading voices include people who can't tell the difference between Hitler's death squad and cold tomato soup. Bill, I'm out.
Are you trying to tell me that the Republicans are a little bit phony?
A little bit. I think they're just straight full of crap. And oh, by the way, these questions should be asked of any candidate running for anything. I saw Adam Kinzinger put a tweet out about that. That when you talk about the censor by the RNC of him and Liz Cheney, I think that should be a question along with January 6th. And yes, any candidate for any office that could even remotely touch it should be asked that question, including state and local. If you're running with an R next to your name, you should be made to answer for that. And maybe that's why Bill will never get a Republican on Forward Maryland, because if one comes on, I'm going to ask him, what do you think about?
I thank you for that clarification, because during your 8-minute monologue, and God knows I tend to monologue as well, it was hard for me to tell if you thought that Republicans were just a little bit phony. So here's how I can respond to that. I don't know if I have much of a response, other than to say that it was on Fox News this morning that an official statement from the office of the 45th president said that if he does achieve office again in 2024 after a fair, non-stolen election, he will require all official documents to be printed on quilted 2-ply or better. So there is that. But in a serious note, there was Mark Meadows on Fox News, the former chief of staff, talking about Nancy Pelosi tearing up the copy of the Trump State of the Union a couple years ago. And of course, it's whataboutism. And of course, that's different. Because the Speaker of the House of Representatives is not privy to the same rule. I mean, the President of the United States, literally, their every action is documented for history. I think everything short of the piece of pretzel that George W. Bush coughed up out of his mouth when he gagged during the Ravens Giants Super Bowl in 2001 is in the archives somewhere. So you have context. So I will respond by saying this: context matters, because as you were talking and giving your many terrific examples of Republican tomfoolery, I thought about, well, do we go down a historical road? Do we go down memory lane and Newt Gingrich's Contract for America? Because, of course, Bill Clinton was so much against American families, hardworking families. This is from the Speaker of the House, who dropped divorce papers on his wife while she was lying in bed with cancer. Or Denny Hastert, the former Speaker of the House, who had several questionable relationships with young men with whom he coached wrestling. Or I think the Republican senator from Idaho, whose name I forget, who made waving one's hand under a airport stall a thing, who was also a family values guy.
Yep.
So there are many, but I think we want to keep it in the here and now, because there is context, and context does matter in today's media, around the world in a heartbeat world. And I'm thinking about recent pictures from Georgia gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams, who was in a classroom, and also Congresswoman Elisa Slotkin from Michigan, who was also in some sort of an adult education setting. And everybody is masked except for Congresswoman Slotkin or Ms. Abrams, who are smiling broadly, in the foreground of the picture. And the Republicans are going, oh, see, rules for thee and not for me. Oh, hypocrisy, hypocrisy, hypocrisy. Forgetting the fact that in both of those cases, There are many other pictures taken where Ms. Abrams, Ms. Slacken have their masks on while they were talking with people, while they were interacting. They were following all the rules, and they took their mask off to get a picture. One picture. That did not create a public health risk for a single soul. So context does matter. That being said, you cannot ignore context.
Right.
So now we have established context does matter. Context is not ignored. On those two bases alone, what you see out of this current edition of the Republican Party is not just hypocrisy. It is hypocrisy of the highest form. It is hypocrisy that goes into other places. It is hypocrisy that goes into gaslighting. And it goes not just into gaslighting, it goes through gaslighting, and it goes into the sphere of propaganda. And I'm going to go there and I'm going to complete that loop with my other topic that I'm going to bring up in a couple minutes. But when you're in a propaganda setting, you are in a very dangerous place. Last point I'll make about one specific individual. How Ted Cruz exists is a wonder to me. I don't even understand how this man gets up in the morning, brushes his teeth, considers himself a credit to his state and his nation, and most of all, his family as a United States Senator. As many things as have been said about him, his wife, his family, and his own actions with, his trip to Cancun while the rest of the state of Texas was freezing, and then his spitting in the face of the memory of Ronald Reagan with his comments about the Supreme Court. I don't understand. I don't understand the level of sociopathy that this man must carry in order to feel that he's a decent human being. I think about people like Jeff Flake. I think about people, like the former senator from Nebraska, Bob Kerrey. I think about Mitt Romney. I think about many an honorable person of both parties who made the choice to walk away from the U.S. Senate because or to hold the Senate to ideals. John McCain, because it's just a lot. It's too much. And this guy just continues not just to skim the mud, but just to roll in it, wallow in it, be so filthy dirty, and yet anoint himself as some scion of virtue. I've never seen the like. There is a special place in American politics for him. I don't know where it is, but I will quote former Minnesota Senator Al Franken, who wrote in his book, "I am maybe the best friend Ted Cruz has ever had in the United States Senate, and I hate Ted Cruz." So,
yeah, that's a hell of a quote. That's a hell of a quote. And I'll just wrap this, Bill, by saying an excellent point that you made about gaslighting and propaganda. And you did mention, some of the incidents, Representative Slotkin, Stacey Abrams, and others. And the difference there is, accountability. Stacey Abrams, within 24 hours, was like, you know what? This is what it was. This is the situation. But in light of the current situation, I was wrong. And you mentioned Al Franken, Al Franken, for allegations of activity, and I don't think any evidence came out that he actually did anything rising to the level of him getting booted from the Senate. Got booted from the Senate. But, on the other side, you have people pulling off stuff that's just, Jim Jordan, I look at, somebody like that, and they're still there. So like I said, hypocrisy is not new. It's not exclusive, but it seems like one side holds themselves accountable and the other one doesn't. But that's all I'll say about that, Bill. I'm going to turn it over to you for our next subject.
Well, I'm going to leave the Al Franken thing alone, other than to say we played Republicans' game on Al Franken. Al Franken never should have been run out of the Senate. Understand he made mistakes. Senator Gilliland and whoever else wanted him out were ridiculous. Republicans saw him as a threat to be the next president. And in today's day and age, wouldn't it have been nice to have had a president our age who's relatable to the ills of men and women our age who have families, who could put things into reasonable terms. Soapbox over. Anyway, I mentioned propaganda. We have it here in Maryland, and our very own Trump-supported candidate for governor of the state of Maryland, Dan Cox, everybody, who I saw signs for yesterday in none other than Western Howard County in the 5th Council District, no less. Steve, while you were giving your impassioned argument towards the last point, I was also looking at my research material for this topic in the form of Delegate Cox's, for those of you in viewer and listener land who are unaware, has filed a House Simple Resolution 1. And of course, Simple and Delegate Dan Cox do go together. A House Simple Resolution concerning articles of impeachment of Governor Lawrence J. Hogan Jr. Wow. So this then goes on into maybe over, well, I'm going to go with about 3.5 pages of monologue regarding Governor Hogan's, the word sedition I don't see, but the word that's used is subversive. His subversive activities undermining the Constitution and the Declaration of Rights of the people of the state of Maryland. So what are some sorts of various misdeeds, of examples of malfeasance that Governor Hogan, who I just savaged a few minutes ago, has done? Apparently, he misused his authority to close down churches during the pandemic, or to designate businesses as quote unquote non-essential, to prevent Marylanders to have access to prophylactic medications, not the type of prophylactics that Dan Cox's father should have been privy to, but medications such as hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, which are of course the non-proven treatments for COVID, and ordering state healthcare workers to, and I quote from the resolution, take the experimental jab or lose their jobs, and then mentioning acts of tyranny also, and talking about Governor Hogan's molestations of the law and just all sorts of wrong things. And have I mentioned recently that Larry Hogan is a guy who laughs like this? I don't know what to make of this. I mean, I would say come on, man, except it's an insult to the term come on, man. This is childish. This is foolish. This is the Trump wing of the party. Steve, in our last episode for our gubernatorial top 10, I mean, we talked about the Hogan wing of the party and its flagging popularity. But is it this unpopular?
I don't know, Bill. And the funny thing about our friends on the other side, and I didn't even get into in my rant, CRT and book banning and things of that nature. But, for people who want to ban books for graphic content, their emails and documents, seem to have a whole lot of sexual connotations and imagery, molestation and stuff. I mean, they maybe there's a repression out there that they're trying to communicate to the rest of the world. But this move by Delegate Cox, I mean, it feels like it's almost not so much a takedown of Larry Hogan, who, as we've said, is in his last year, lame duck, final session. It almost feels like he's trying to take down Hogan World, which would, of course, include one Kelly Schultz. I feel like this is almost not directed at the outgoing governor as it is to further burnish his MAGA street cred. Not that Cox needs any more, but after his involvement in January 6th. But I feel like it's really trying to take down Kelly Schultz in his attempt to be the nominee. Now, there are a few ridiculous things about it, and you mentioned so many of them. I don't know how many more I could add, but as we've said, Cox is in a great position to be the Republican nominee. He has that world in his. I don't know who he plans on. What support does he gain from the stunt? And it's a stunt. Let's not call it anything else than what it really is. I don't know where he's going with this, even if it is trying to take down Kelly Schultz. I don't know what this does to advance that cause. I mean, are you going to have Hogan/Schultz supporters after the primary saying, well, he's our nominee, we'll roll with him, especially if you have somebody like a Peter Franchot, who Hogan's had a good relationship with, or a Doug Gansler, who is not a wild-eyed liberal or any of the ones in the top half Democrats that we talked about in our last top 10. Would they stick with this man who is batshit crazy, who has decided to try to take down, the popular governor, Republican of the state of Maryland? Are moderate Republicans going to go with this guy if he's the nominee, or are they going to sit it out, or are they going to say, you know what? I'd rather just see Peter Franchot or Doug Gansler or Rashawn Baker be governor over this clown. I don't know what he accomplishes except for getting attention in certain corners that he already has in his pocket.
He's put his stick in the ground, that's for sure, has he not? I mean, he certainly is like, this is who and where I am, and so this is what I think, and he thinks Larry Hogan is a no goodnik who needs to be thrown out of office because virus. And I mean, I mentioned before, Hogan's legislative record sucks. However, as an executive managing the state through the virus, he's made many prudent decisions. And I think far fewer in the second year of the pandemic than in the first. Second year, politics seems to have gone more in there than it did in the first year, although there was still some. But in general, as a Marylander, I was pretty satisfied with how he piloted the state through those initial months of the pandemic. So to hit Hogan on that really seems kind of dumbheaded. Also, the two happiest people to see this have to be Senate President Bill Ferguson and Speaker Adrian Jones. This ain't going anywhere in the House, in the Maryland General Assembly. Why should it? Democrats aren't going to vote for it, and they can say that they're stand with Governor Hogan. It's bipartisan. We don't feel the governor should be thrown out of office. We feel that these people here on the fringe right are goofballs. So, in a state legislature like Pennsylvania's, if the Dan Cox of Pennsylvania would do something against Tom Wolf, they do have a Republican majority. I can understand it. And the governor's race is up this year. It's contested, just like in Maryland. So I could see it, but yeah, other than burnishing his Trump world bona fides, which I would imagine he wouldn't need to do, but then always to get the attention of the king, one must always get the king's attention. I guess maybe it's necessary. Speaking of getting the king's attention, Steve, you have a issue of local import to those of us in the county of Howard, originally the Howard district of Anne Arundel County, but now the county of Howard, regarding our illustrious superintendent of schools.
Well, speaking of, prudent decisions and leadership during very uncertain times due to the pandemic, last week there was a vote on the Howard County Board of Ed regarding the contract of Public School Superintendent Dr. Michael Martirano. His contract ended as of June 30th, so they have to make a decision per their process by this time to decide whether or not A, to renew the contract, or B, decide that they're not going to renew it and start the search for a new superintendent. They chose to reappoint him or renew his contract for another 4 years. Now, the interesting thing, if you look at the votes, it was a unanimous vote, but there were board members who were not either present. I'm assuming they weren't present because they didn't abstain. I believe Christina Delmont Small, I did not see her name on votes cast. So I don't know what that's about. Maybe I read it wrong, but I was on board docs and they showed the final vote and who voted for it. But it was, of those present, it was a unanimous vote for Dr. Martirano. The opinions and feeling amongst the county, I think overwhelmingly is in support of the contract renewal for Dr. Martirano. But there is a minority, and they may be small, but they're pretty darn loud, who have issue with Dr. Martirano continuing to serve as our superintendent. Some of them were probably the same people who were at the board meeting the other day protesting outside to have the superintendent and the board drop the mask mandate, following the lead of leaders, state, local, and national, who seem to be falling all over themselves to be first to say, we've dropped our mask mandate. I've got an opinion on that I wanted to get into vis-a-vis where we still are with COVID, number of people dying, et cetera. But Dr. Martirano, stuck to his guns and said, we're going to keep the mask mandates in our schools. Actually going against County Executive Calvin Ball, who dropped mask mandates for everywhere in the county except for government buildings, buses, et cetera. So, Martirano pretty much said to Dr. Ball, not going with that, pal. I'm sure there are others who are mad about the whole idea of reopening and getting back to in-person learning. No matter that Dr. Martirano, if he had his way, we would have been back in person, at least in a hybrid environment, sooner than we actually ended up doing that. It was actually the Board of Ed who not only shot down Martirano's suggestion that in the third quarter of the 21-22 year, we went to a hybrid environment, but when he even said, hey, let me at least look at it, they took another vote saying, no, we don't even want you to look at it. That vote actually was one of the catalysts for some citizens of the county looking to take away the voting rights of the student member of the board. And I'm sure there are some people who are angry at the last redistricting exercise when he talked about redistricting with a lens of equity, trying to, tackle some of the issues that we do have here in Howard County with achievement gap, et cetera. So I'm sure there are some people who have hard feelings. You can guess where all of those people stand from an ideological standpoint. So there was a loud minority. What I would say to those folks, and this is, Bill, you and I are sports guys, and, you see calls sometimes to fire an NFL coach. I even saw recently in Ravens Twitter, maybe it's time for John Harbaugh to go. And of course, my answer to that was, who you got out there better than this guy leading this team? It's one thing to say, this person needs to go. Who's your option? And I would say that to those who object to Martirano getting another 4 years in what are still uncertain times. Bonnie Bricker on, HOCO School Interests, which is a Facebook page dedicated to school issues, and Bonnie does a great job with that, posted an article in response to somebody's comment showing the number of Maryland superintendents that are rolling out. Now, this is on top of the large number of educators who are rolling out. Teachers have been taking it, not just in terms of the challenges of this whole virtual remote environment. Many of them not only are teaching rooms virtual rooms full of kids, but also their own kids and making sure they're getting educated. So what I would say to those who would object to Dr. Martirano staying on, who you got? Who with other superintendents rolling out, where's your unicorn that can come in here and do a better job and provide a steadier hand than Dr. Michael Martirano? That would be my comment. I think it was appropriate that he be extended, especially during these times. I think he has not done a perfect job. I have issues with certain things, but I think overall, to your point about Hogan during the pandemic, I think Dr. Martirano has provided the type of leadership that we needed during these times. I think it would have looked better if the board would have gotten out of his way on some things. And that's my comment. I congratulate Dr. Martirano on his contract renewal, and I certainly support it.
So fully a third of the school superintendent jobs in Maryland jurisdictions, counties, and Baltimore City are vacant. Carroll, Caroline, Wycomico, Talbot, Anne Arundel, Calvert, Frederick, and Montgomery counties. So for those of you following at home, that includes Westminster, Salisbury, Easton, St. Michael's, Oxford, Frederick, of course, La Plata and Calvert, Annapolis, Anne Arundel, Montgomery, got Rockville, Gaithersburg.
Yeah.
Got a lot of places. It's a lot of the population. Montgomery's 1 million people. Frederick's about 300,000. Anne Arundel's about another 500,000. It's probably at least a third of the state of Maryland whose school children do not have chief executives at the head of their schools. That's not for accident. That's because, in part, people who are sitting in these jobs are tired of all the nonsense. They can go off and they can do other things. They can be a consultant. They can work for a think tank. They can teach in academia. They can go to another jurisdiction somewhere else around the country. We in Howard County, and this is one of the things that has led to my great disillusionment with all things Howard County over the recent few years, are very spoiled. We hang ourselves on our perceived exceptionalism, and we don't know when we got a good thing or even a decent thing until it's gone. Let's not forget, the last full-time superintendent of the Howard County Schools before Dr. Martirano probably ought to be in jail for a number of actual items of malfeasance of office. And that's in addition to the amazing customer service and relatability to and sensitivity to the school populations when kids were getting sick due to unhealthy air conditions, when a child was cyberbullied to the point of committing suicide, all the other wonderful things that happened under that former superintendent's leadership. So has the Martirano term been a terrific one? It's been good. It's been more than capable. This is the first superintendent who I have seen where I do not have children as you do in the schools. So I can't really say that it's made my personal life, any better or any worse. But what I can say is that, it's been fair. And then by that, I don't mean fair on a poor, good, fair, satisfactory, excellent scale. I mean, it's been fair on an even-handed scale. And we need reminders in this county and across the state that fair, there's nothing wrong with fair. In fact, fair is what we deserve. So I'm not really so much stunned by his reappointment as I am by his desire to be reappointed, because there certainly have been, and you mentioned, a number of items going on in Howard County in the last 4 years. And incidentally, I stand, as I remember my own family history, yes, my younger child was at least in the school system at the beginning of Moderano's tenure, at least for her senior year of high school. It's good that he wants the job. So good luck to him for the next 4 years. I have a feeling he'll need it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sitting on a group now, Spending Affordability Advisory Committee, and there are definitely challenges out there, not only just in day-to-day operations, supporting the needs of the students, which is the ultimate goal of the superintendent and the board, or at least it darn well should be. Sometimes I get a sense that that's not quite. They have other interests other than the best interests of the kids. But there are a lot of challenges there. The blueprint is still sitting out there, and some of the requirements under the blueprint for Maryland's future, that implementation is about to begin for those who are not aware. In Howard, we have a new high school that's about to open up, High School 13. So, I mentioned redistricting earlier. There's going to be another redistricting exercise, and I'm sure that's going to be, so much fun, like it always is. And a very important point you mentioned, Bill, that I'll wrap with, and turn it over to you to wrap this whole thing up. We talked about exceptionalism, and there's been a lot of talk nationwide about American exceptionalism, and that leads us into the CRT debate. By the way, in my rant about hypocrisy, I could have done another 10 minutes on canceling, education and teaching and what we're talking about in schools, et cetera. So, but I wanted to keep it at least semi short. Maybe I failed at that, but anyway, Howard County, I think, does have that sense of American exceptionalism, local style. I don't know. We'll have to come up with a term for that, but there certainly is a sense in our county that we are special and we deserve special things, not just good things, not even just great things. We need to be next level at everything we do. Never mind the realities of budgets and financial situations and other things, a pandemic that drops in our lap, that we're not going to get all the way there. We can aspire to get there. But I think the problem that I see sometimes in this county is our aspirations become our goals, and when we fail to meet the aspirations, oh my God, everything sucks. I think, Bill, that struck me when you mentioned exceptionalism, because I think that is truly a thing here. And there's some folks in Howard County that need to get over themselves and realize we've got it pretty darn good. I mean, you look at other places, other counties, even financially, as far as citizens during the pandemic, we're in a lot better position overall as a county than a lot of places in this country. Rural areas, places that were depending on manufacturing. I mean, I've seen some numbers, and we certainly have rode this out way better than a lot of people. So maybe it's time for some folks to count their blessings, not lament what they think they should have but don't. So I just wanted to throw that out there, Bill. There's a term that needs to be created, but that is such a strong point as far as what's going on in the minds of some in our county.
The term that I'm going to put out there in prototype form right now is Howard County is the county of grunculation.
Ooh.
And as you were describing your whole thing about exceptionalism and being special, and I hate this. I hate this athlete. I mean, I'm guessing he's probably a nice young man, but Rob Gronkowski, I hate him. He's a turd. But I will say this: he does laugh at himself in his own meathead image, and I love the USAA commercial where he calls in to try to get a USAA membership, which he can't because neither he nor anyone in his family was a member of the military. And he's trying to con the lady into letting him get a membership. And she says, well, you have to be special to earn a USAA membership. And he goes, well, I'm special. And
I love
it's
that commercial.
kind of on the edge of being inappropriate, but the lady just goes, just shakes her head like, no. And that's kind of Howard County. But I'm special. And the rest of the world, state, country, world, is like, that's where we live, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah.
We live in a gronktastic place to live.
I love
It's
that commercial.
Gronktacular.
Yes. Love that commercial. That commercial, you're right. It's hysterical. We call it first, says, yeah, this is Rob. But yeah, that's
Little
great.
known fact, Rob Gronkowski was very heavily recruited to play football at University of Maryland. And in fact, his brother, Chris, did play at university. The third one, Dan, I think, had signed a letter of intent and then decided to go to Arizona. But of the Gronkowskis, there was one of the brothers did go to College Park and was he was the tight end after, or was he there at the same time as? I think he was there at the same time as Vernon Davis, who was the number 6 overall NFL pick, played for the 49ers, the Commanders and their previous guys. And yeah, I think he only played for those 2 teams. So there is a Gronk connection to the state of Maryland, tenuous though it might be. But
Alrighty then.
the Howard County, we'll have to work on that. Gronkalicious. Howard County is Gronkalicious.
Gronk spike. Boom.
What's Alan Kettleman doing? Oh my God, he's spiking the Howard County Charter. Have you worked on what Alan Kettleman's music is yet?
You know what? I have not come up with that one.
I think it's Jesus Loves Me, This I Know, for the Bible Tells Me So.
Okay. Yeah, I think we had some good candidates with our friend Jason there. So we'll have to
either that or some serious thrash metal, like some Finnish speed metal.
There you go. There you go. So yeah, some European speed, maybe some Motorhead or something, you know. So just
Dude
can't
even find Finland on a map. You got anything in closing, Steve?
No, nothing in closing. You know, Bill, this was a fun episode. You know, sometimes it's great when you just have a week where it's like, you know what, let's just talk about stuff that has either come up or has come to mind. You know, every once in a while, it's just good to just let one of these rip. Hopefully our listeners and viewers enjoyed it. You know, we'll obviously get back to, you know, our more standard political analysis and having guests on and interviews and all that. But every once in a while, you know, the Marshmallow Man has to come back out.
I made a comment at the beginning, but the truth is he's got viewed.
There you go.
Viewed. These get subscriptions. These sell, baby. You know what these are? These are Gronktastic.
There you go. Well, what I was going to say is, you know, we do the standard stuff, but every once in a while, the Marshmallow Man has to come out of retirement. And if you don't know who the Marshmallow Man is, you better ask somebody.
You better call somebody.
Good stuff.
All right, Steve, enjoy the rest of your snowy Sunday and enjoy the Super Bowl.
Yep.
And you too, out there in viewer and listener land, enjoy your Sunday. We'll be coming at you with another edition of Forward Maryland next week. Take care, everybody.